Well, hello. We are Dave and Mariana, and we're going to present Starbucks. Consume, toss, repeat. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of the information of the content of the presentation. First, we're going to see the introduction to Starbucks and its waste problem. Then we're going to see their sustainability goals and their targets and results to date. And then we're going to present a little bit of our study that we did in the Spanish context, our findings and what we did about it. And we're going to close with some recommendations for Starbucks. Now, what is our contribution? Well, we would like to highlight the gap between Starbucks' stated sustainability goals and what they're actually doing in practice. We will also like to highlight the impact of the local context within their recycling and waste reduction. We will also like to propose some recommendations to help them address their sustainability challenges that they're facing right now. And also, to conclude, we would like to identify future research topics to enable them to improve their CSR performance. Now, Dave, tell us a little bit more about Starbucks.
Okay. So Starbucks, their paradox of their success is really about their multi-billion-dollar brand being built on disposable packaging. This has been great for shareholders, stock price, but detrimental to the environment. So let me explain. Starbucks, right now the 45th most valuable brand in the world, up from 67 the year before. In its 23,000 stores in 68 countries, it's generating increasing profits reaching $19 billion last year. Problem being is that 73% of its sales involve beverages, which is not a surprise, but 4 billion disposable cups are used annually, and this estimate is probably pretty low, but it's the most common. And what we're seeing is that 80% of the cups leave the store, and this is their own stats, and depending on the context, you've seen estimates of 2.5 billion cups a year end up in landfills. And if they're not ending up in landfills, they're also likely ending up in the environment. And certain studies have said when we look at littering from fast food packaging is that fast food can account for upwards of almost 50%. And in these studies, Starbucks was identified as one of the top 5 contributors. So, but Starbucks is not myopic to these issues, and in 2008 they announced their shared planet goals, which involve environmental targets considering stewardship, as well as other ones involving reducing water consumption, renewable energy. But what's interesting is that their targets really only apply to company-owned stores, which is kind of sneaky given that 53% of their stores are company-owned, resulting in 47 where these goals do not apply. We are interested in the top 2, recycling in stores and beverages being used in reusable cups. So where are they? So recycling. Right now they're at 59% in terms of company stores that have recycling, up from 5% in 2010, which is positive. But this is part of a broader issue with recycling, because also in 2008, they identified the goal, which they've since abandoned, of having a cup that is fully recyclable. So some of the issues associated with that have been the fact that it's paper, plastic, which makes the recycling process more expensive. They don't generate enough of these things. So companies that recycle the cups are unwilling to adopt their process to accommodate this. And then in addition to that, when we look at the cups challenge, as well as their challenge of navigating a diverse array of local municipal recycling processes, or the fact that a lot of their infrastructure isn't owned, therefore they're dependent on landlords to provide a recycling service that may not be there. So Mariana, where are we on beverages in reusable cups?
This is very interesting too. So in 2008, they actually said that they were going to serve by 2015 25% of their beverages in reusable cups. But in 2010, they actually changed the goal to 5%. So you think, well, maybe they achieved that. Actually, no. Since 2008, they haven't even surpassed the 2% threshold, and they have lost a little bit of percentage in the last couple of years. So what does this mean in volume? Well, this is the volume of sales of beverage in Starbucks within their company-owned stores. This is the 5% goal, and this is what they've actually achieved. You can see it. Let me help you. There it is. Okay. So today, please, let's put Starbucks to the test in Madrid.
So as you can see, they have a significant waste problem that they're not really doing a great job on. So we wanted to understand what was happening in the local context. So specifically, we set out to understand how customers are interacting with their products and how Starbucks is managing their waste. So we used 3 approaches, one of which was to conduct interviews with employees in the stores. We conducted 5 one-hour observation sessions to actually see what consumers were doing. And then we interviewed a representative from IMSD to have an understanding of how the recycling is supposed to work in theory in Madrid. So we went to 16 stores of the 30 in central Madrid. Our data is based on 15, one of which was not wanting to talk to us. It's also important to note that stores in Spain are licensed to Grupo VIP, so again, those sustainability targets are likely not to apply. And then some considerations quickly. Anecdotally, we thought the established sit-down culture here would likely influence the results, as well as the time of the year in that preference of hot drinks versus cold drinks. So no surprise when we look at our findings is that most people here drank their beverages in-store, 73%. And this would align with findings in the literature. When you look at the distributions of drinks ordered, we can see two things. One of which is the fact that reusable cups has a positive impact on reducing the amount of disposable. So hot drinks in reusable cups, hot drinks in disposable cups. So, but the problem we also see here is that cold drinks are not served in reusable cups. This is not an option provided by the company. So as a result, you have 109 cold drinks consumed in-store in plastic containers that are discarded, which is a significant problem. And then we looked at their other goal that they identified, is anyone actually bringing their own cup? No surprise, their employees were like, it's 0 to 10%, but really 0. So, so what we found was that, aside from the 0 people who brought it, we were the only ones who brought our own cup, because we actually wanted to see if they would give us the 40-cent discount. Happy to say, 4 out of 5 times they did, and the 4th time we actually had to ask for it, but they gave it to us nonetheless. So, Mariana, so how does recycling work here?
Okay, I'm going to explain how does Starbucks recycle in Madrid. Okay, Starbucks, by law, has to assume the cost of waste management of packaging, okay? They have 2 options. Either they can do it individually. This way, they can pay a private company to collect, sort, and recycle the packaging they're putting into the market. This is very expensive and it's not part of their business, so of course they're not doing that. So they're using another way. This way is called EcoEmbes. EcoEmbes is a not-profit organization which is in charge of the coordination of the process of recycling, of the packaging. So they pay a fee according to the amount of waste or packaging that they're putting into the market. Now, EcoEmbes only takes charge of the household waste that they're generating. Household waste is a waste that goes outside of the store. Now, the waste generated within the store is called commercial waste. What happens to that waste? Well, they have 2 more other options. Now, they can either pay a private company like CESPA to pick up and dispose of it, or they can pay a tax to the municipality in order for them to be able to use the bins. So you know the yellow bin is for plastics and the blue one is for cardboard and paper. Now, this is the way we assume they're doing it because of the answers they gave us in the interviews. Now, in practice, what happened? Well, we interviewed, as they said, some of the employees, and when we asked, like, do you recycle? They told us, well, we separate some things. Okay, what? Well, we separate paper and cardboard. Oh, good. What do you do with it? Well, 2 of them told us that they actually do put them in the blue bins, which are the ones for paper and cardboard. Okay, what happens with the rest, the 13? Well, they actually told us that what they do is they put it outside the store. Okay. 5 of them told us that they leave it outside the store for the Romanians to take it. Implicitly, yeah. Now, what happens with plastic? Well, we do separate. We separate the bins. No, sorry, the bricks. 7 out of 15 told us that. The rest told us, we cannot do it, sorry. We cannot do it. Why? Because we don't have space for storage. Okay, why would you need space for storage? Well, since they're using the bins from the municipality, and as we know, the yellow bin is picked up every 2 days only, they don't have space for the day that they're not picking up the waste to storage the plastic. So yeah, they put it with the rest of the waste. Yeah, now, we have some recommendations.
So our recommendations are intended to apply to both company-owned stores as well as those are licensed. So they're both specific and general. So one of the things we saw from our study was that making sustainability the easy choice has a positive effect. However, in most Starbucks contexts, especially in North America, which is their largest market and accounts for 2/3 of their revenue, it is not the easy choice. It is not the default choice. And their Starbucks literature is explicit about this in that they say, at the customer's request, they can ask for reusable dishware So you've made it hard. You have to make people opt in. So we recognize that people are lazy and this won't happen. So as a general thing, you need to understand how to make sustainable behavior the easy choice. And this also brings us to another critical issue with respect to this issue of cups, and in that initially when Starbucks identified the goal of 25% of beverages served in reusable cups, it included both the cup I brought from home as well as their cups, reusable cups they provided in store. But they identified huge issues with respect to tracking. They weren't doing a very good job of measuring what cups are being used. And this is hugely problematic because they have no data. But it's easily rectifiable in two ways. We already know when you go to Starbucks, they're already asking you a litany of information with respect to your name, the drink you want, the size, do you want anything in it? So on the screen when they register your drink, it's not hard to have an extra field where you identify it was a reusable cup or it was to go, like very simple. Or if they wanted to have more real-time data collected, you could have a QR code or barcode that you scan the cup before a drink is made. Very simple. But the idea here is that they need to collect baseline information and start benchmarking their strategies in terms of tactics that may reduce disposable cups or increase the use of reusable ones. But this also brings us to a broader issue of incentives. As we talked about, the reusable cup strategies failed horribly. Many people online in the My Starbucks idea have highlighted that 40 cents, 20 cents, 10 cents, depending on the context you're in, makes no difference when your drink is $5, £5, €5. So we thought they need to leverage a more ingrained and socially accepted way that has more incentives. In that Starbucks, whether here, a group of EAPs, or in North America, has rewards programs. In North America, you have 14 million users of their rewards program. And there's a way, people like collecting points, people like free things, so why not encourage a certain behavior you're looking for? So for illustration, you buy a drink, you take it to go, you get 1 point. But if you buy a drink and you consume it in-store, which is the desired behavior, you maybe get 5 times the points. Or if you bring your own cup, which is the goal, you get maybe 10 points. But the idea is you want to create a positive feedback loop to encourage the behavior you're seeking. Secondly, a more perhaps radical idea, Starbucks has experimented with a cheap reusable cup to encourage people to bring it. This hasn't worked, but part of the issues we've seen with waste versus resource is that there's no value assigned to the cup. So one strategy they could do is just pick one cup that is reusable for all their beverages, and that when you buy a drink, there's a deposit associated with that. We've seen it with packaging in other contexts, beer bottles, liquor bottles, plastic bottles, in that the idea we can now create a circular exchange of cups, i.e. you can bring your cup, get the discount applied to your next drink, or the big issue is that if this cup ends up in a waste stream, there's an incentive to collect it and divert it from the landfill and bring it into the store. And this would be one area they could experiment with. But on collection is another issue that Mariana would like to recommend.
Yeah. So we actually have another recommendation, and it's, why don't you use a collective collection? Why are you doing it alone? Okay, you're Starbucks. You're part of the fast food industry. How many are there? So there's one. If you work with them, if you work with the other peers of the same sector as you could get much higher benefits, make less costly the collection of the waste, and it will be profitable to all of you. This is not a rivalry issue, so you could work with the others, for sure. Now, in terms of sustainability, why aren't you making it a financial risk? We find out, we searched their financial statement from 2008 to 2015, and we couldn't find any sites of stating poor CSR performance as a financial risk. Now, there is a disconnection because actually they have said that their cup, which is their symbol, their icon, is their #1 environmental liability. So you are stating that you have a huge risk there, but you're not taking it as a reputational issue. Now, another part that we found out when we went to the interviews is that you are not telling your employees what you're trying to achieve. They are the frontliners of your company, and they don't know what you want to do or what the results you want to get. So if you don't involve them, if you don't tell them what you really want to achieve, you won't get any results, and if you do, they will be much lower than what you could get. Now, and to find out another recommendation, last but not least, is you have to make sustainability goals a universal thing. When you go as a customer to Starbucks, you don't think, oh, this is actually owned by Grupo BIP, so it doesn't matter. No, you see a Starbucks anywhere. So you have to apply the goals to all of them. It's kind of misleading that you're only applying it to 53% of your companies, of your stores. So you really have to make it an update of the licensee agreements that you already have. Now, Dave, future research.
So we've highlighted the issues and problems associated with their waste issues, their efforts to manage this waste. But really, one of the big things at the heart here is that you have a business model premised on disposability. But at this point, we haven't built the case for why Starbucks should shift their model. Because in many contexts, outside of Spain, because Spain has extended producer responsibility laws, because you see they had to pay. But in North America, for instance, Starbucks can externalize the costs of disposal, which is an advantage for them. But, so if we're proposing that they need to shift to more reusable consumption, there's costs associated with this at large that we have not really articulated. So what we'd want to see is a more articulated cost-benefit analysis to highlight not only the immediate costs, but the long-term benefits of shifting how their consumers interact with their product, engage with their product, and address the waste that may be generated from that. Because right now we don't have a coherent financial argument to make for why they should change what they're presently doing. It's just environmental and maybe even moral. And that's not necessarily always compelling. And then the other thing that we really want to see is research on sort of the behavior behind the consumption. As we've seen, there's a lot of issues that reinforce negative behaviors, but we don't really have a coherent case study on how present factors are affecting Starbucks customers. We know they design their stores to enhance consumption, like they're designed and engineered for a specific way, but we don't have information on how they're set up in a way that discourages more sustainable consumption. We know there are maybe also factors in terms of training, behavior, the fact that your employees aren't asking people, are they staying or are they going? Do you want a cup? What are the social norms associated with this? And then the second one would be interesting though is how the alignment of Starbucks' marketing can drive certain behavior. Because as we've noticed, it's ironic that their cup, the disposable cup, is a huge environmental liability, but it's prolific in their Instagram, in social media, in their advertising. So you have a disconnection here between what you're marketing and then what you're trying to achieve. So the goal here would be to how to align Starbucks marketing with their sustainability goals with their operational policies. So to sort of conclude here, Starbucks has a huge waste problem, but really we think the solution lies not in reduction or recycling as their first strategy of what they presented, because recycling is just another form of disposal. It really needs to be on reduction if they're committed to actually reducing the amount of waste they generate. But recognizing that in the interim they're going to generate still significant amounts of waste, and as long as there's financial pressures to grow their market, there'll be more waste. But there is, as Mariana discussed, there is an opportunity for a collective solution with the industry that they're in to lower the costs, but also increase the reputational benefits associated with reducing the environmental impact from the industry. So to conclude, we'll back to the future, or to the future.
Hopefully this will be the future.
Well, I was really impressed since the beginning, since the first time I spoke to you. That's sincere, and I'm not just saying it just to make you happy or anything else. I think you did a great job. It was professional. You had many ideas that I just gave you. I don't know, maybe 2, 3 ideas, and were your ideas. You told me, thank you very much, Marcus, for your support. I think I did nothing. No, sure, you did everything. You just had an idea and you find a methodology, you collected data, which is the most important thing in your research, because otherwise it's just sentences and ideas that are not like, without any data behind. It has no value. So you went to the Starbucks, you prepared that questionnaire, you collected the data, then you prepare the conclusions. I think it's a really good job, and it's something that could be like done for any other business. You choose Starbucks, but I'm sure if you do the same with McDonald's or with Burger King or with, I don't know, anyone, you could maybe find the same or similar conclusions. And I think that that it's a really valuable job, because we are always reading and listening to marketing statements about, we're doing this, we have this goal, we're achieving it. It's in the website, it's in the newspaper, it's in everywhere, internet, in Facebook. And then when you just try to find out what is behind, you see that is not true. And I think that this has a big reputational risk for these companies. Maybe they're just worried about having this huge $19 billion revenue. That might be their goal. I mean, it's for sure something that we have to understand. But I think they're considering, if I can say that, I don't know if this word exists, that if there is this kind of work that you've done is, I don't know, just maybe written or posted in a blog or somewhere going through people and people know what is really happening, that is a big risk for them.
Or present it to them next week.
So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, so maybe you can say that. We can tell them what we're going to do.
Yeah, we're going to present this to Starbucks next week.
And he asked me if we could maybe show him the presentation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Connect to students.
So building. We all love Starbucks in our coffees. I love my espresso macchiato. So building what Marcus was saying, the difference between McDonald's, KFC, and Starbucks is Starbucks shows itself as a responsible company, whilst the others don't. So I think the reputational risk of Starbucks is much, much higher. You don't expect anything sustainable from McDonald's. You just know what you see, what you get. But Starbucks, the premise that they have is really sustainable. So I think what would be really interesting, and I'm not sure, and amazing, to grab my attention for such a long time on stats is really difficult. But you did a beautiful job, not just at researching some really excellent stats, but presenting them in an amazing way, so congratulations. But I think one key element is this reputational risk that they're facing because of their exposure. We are sustainable, actually you're not. And the Volkswagen example, I think, is a pretty good case of, you know, how much you could use in billions, which is definitely worth investing a few millions in actually creating a more sustainable. So as an incentive, the campaigning, we're going to show this live. Well, we show it to you first, tell us what you do, and then we're going to go live, is a very strong incentive, but also monetizing the reputational risk, I think that'd be really good. I'm not sure if you had any ideas on putting numbers to this reputational risk. I'm not sure if the Volkswagen has got some pretty strong numbers, or if there's something else that you could do there, because I think that's the strongest way in which to make change happen. Additional bonus, I did not know I could get 20 cents back for if I brought my cap. So 40, okay, so thank you for the for the tip. Now I know.
It doesn't have to be from start. It can be any.
Oh, great, even better. Thank you. So reputational risk numbers, is there something, do you think that's something that?
I think that is, I would agree with you. Obviously, we feel that that's a huge issue, because it's interesting when we looked and did the content analysis of, you know, what was it, 7 years of financial reports to stakeholders, their business risks articulated in a way that you explicitly state inability to achieve strategic initiatives is considered a financial risk. Yet I look at your sustainability goals, and are those not strategic initiatives? And yet in the supporting tasks, I recognize it's a financial document to stakeholders, but you're even not communicating that risk to your stakeholders effectively. So that you're concealing that. In terms of actually monetizing the risk, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a numbers person. But I also may think it right now, as you can see it, until, maybe it's not a reputational issue, but until you see legislation change, where there's a cost associated with this type of operational model, then they would likely change. Because you look in North America, you're perpetuating a culture that is, you take it to go. You wait in the drive-through in your car, idling to get your coffee. So they're just, supporting what people are already doing in that regard. But what's interesting is that they're even shooting themselves in the foot by their inability to track how many people are using ceramic cups like here in Spain. Because actually, as we observed, majority of people in this particular context are already being more sustainable, and you're not even capturing that success. So by improving how they track this, which can be very simply done, is that you're not even effectively communicating your efforts. So really, maybe you are 25% and you met your target. But you don't say that because you focused on the hardest aspect of behavior to change, in that you're asking people to create new behaviors rather than just aligning your processes with existing behaviors. And that's really what the literature is saying is why so many of these initiatives fail, is because there's a value action gap. And don't fight the gap, just, join, you know what I mean? So.
Here.
Just to add a little bit, the fact that they could get away by changing the goal in 2011 from 25% to 5% without anyone literally saying, is that people are not looking at Starbucks right now in terms of their recycling as much as they should. So that's maybe one of the reasons why they're not taking that into account that much, but it's very interesting that literally it's a huge change and you're not even meeting that. And so for us, that was actually the part that caught us in this topic. That is like, how could you get away with changing that percentage without making a huge revolution in the internet? So yeah.
Okay, for me there's a huge issue here, and it's your question, why should Starbucks change its business model, is essentially that. And you've just touched on something, and it's about legislation. And for me, the elephant in the room is, what is government doing? What is the regulatory environment for this? And the fact that companies can self-regulate on these issues is for me a hugely important issue. So my question for you is, where can government play a role in this, and how far do you think a change in the regulatory environment would cause a push on Starbucks to change this trend?
So when we were looking at some of the, because it's kind of what made this somewhat sort of, not difficult, but you're like, is that most of their corporately owned stores or operated stores are in the US, which is their largest market, which probably in a lot of ways generates a lot of the environmental damage. And when we looked at the number of extended producer responsibility laws in the US, I could count them on my two hands. And the ones that do exist do not apply to commercial packaging, specifically like fast food packaging. They're usually attributable to like electronics, big items where you already have perhaps more developed, mature logistics in place to get those back. But the question of legislation is super key, and it's two ways. Because you say, I think the industry obviously doesn't like it, and what's explicit in the literature is the appeals to the notion of consumer sovereignty, in that it's up to the individual to make the choice. We can provide them the information, but ultimately it's up for them, sort of that light touch because of free market sort of deal. And I think until you can, depending on the context, because in Spain, as we saw, this law here is part of a broader EU directive. But in North America, China, or the UK, if the regulatory climate isn't interested in those for a variety of reasons, then I don't think the model will change. Because why would they? They can benefit and they don't have to deal with the costs or the headache, as we've seen here. Because even if they've been trying to be proactive, and it's sort of a minefield. And when we were talking with Esther from EcoMBS, she even had to admit that their own operations have been hugely successful with improving recycling in household waste. So they're operating at about 70, just under 75% efficiency in terms of household waste that is recycling, but that is one stream. And that's 8% of the total waste that is generated in the country. So even someone who works in it is passionate, where you have the law that compels this, it's problematic. But legislation is key because you need to push and pull companies because then they'll see the monetary advantages and then they can respond. So maybe you need a cap and trade system for waste they generate. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that as Dave said, the Spanish model, well, the EU model, is very interesting because you're actually just charging them for putting their packaging in the market. So it's kind of like a cost for them, and it makes them a little bit think a little bit more of what they're putting to their environment. But if you look at North America, they're not even thinking about it. So I think it's a good model that other countries could learn from. And they have 12,000 companies, and they're regulated. As we said, they pay a fee to EcoInvest according to the number of packagings that they're putting to the market. So at least they're charging something to them. Like at least there's a cost in there that maybe they can rethink about, and maybe it will reduce somehow the production they're getting.
Maybe one last comment. In sort of when you look at the incentives, even in Spain, because they're licensed. So depending on the license agreement, it's interesting when we looked at the revenue distribution, and even though 47% of stores are licensed, they only account for something like 10% of Starbucks revenue. So when you look at who's going to eat that cost, it's going to be the franchisee. And if there may be certain things they can't control because they're corporately owned, and since the majority of the profits come from corporately owned stores in jurisdictions that don't have this compelling legislation, they're not going to change that. So.
There's another thing regarding behavior, and not about consumer behavior, but about employees and franchise behavior regarding. It's much easier for an employee just to collect the cups and put them in the bin than taking the other one in ceramic and then wash them and spend time in washing them, or it's most of them when they visited this Starbucks in Callao, which is a more like touristic Starbucks, which everyone just take the cup. For them, it's just, okay, you take the cup, you take it, and go away. We are not going to spend any resource. We don't have to have one or two employees trying to take the cups from the tables, then wash them, because they don't have time or resources for that. So they really just, it's not a priority. Their priority is just sell coffees, more coffees, and then, okay, just take the cups and goodbye.
That's the only store that doesn't offer ceramic. That's the only store that doesn't offer ceramic cups. Callao. They told us, they explained to us that it's because even this is a really small space, it's because they're full of tourists that are only passing through. So they don't offer that one. Yeah. But as Marco said, it represents another cost. Maybe here in the Spanish culture is easier because people are more used to sitting down and spending some time in the cafeterias. So you actually add the cost of having a waiter, well, not a waiter, of part of the staff picking up the cups and washing them. But in North America, as they say, we're used to the drive-through and run, and I take it and I toss it, and I don't care what happens. So yeah, it's a liability. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
I really think that you have a good presentation, very professional, and you really should present your idea, your project to Starbucks. Following the same line as Marcos, companies are people, no? Companies are people. The same people that then consume and all the habits. I mean, the companies are people. Many times we talk about the companies, but we are the companies as well. So I was remembering my experience working in multinationals in sustainability areas and the engagement of the employees. And it used to be really low because it's not meaningful to the employees. They don't believe on that. We don't believe on that as employees as well. So one of my questions is considering, I don't remember which slide it was, but yeah, you mentioned the employees engagement. Yeah, What do you think are the key points in order to engage the employees, to really engage the employees, to make it meaningful for them so that they can maybe think about, I will do something that maybe will consume a bit more of my time and my effort, but it's more sustainable than the other way?
Well, what we came across in the interviews, for example, I don't know, I'm going to say names, well, mention one, but in Serrano, for example, I went and I interviewed the employee and he told me, well, actually, we don't recycle. Okay, we only separate the cardboard. Okay, and then you go and you see in the trash cans for the clients, you see a trash can that is divided, like organic and plastics, and you're like, but you put it all together, so why would you have that if you are not actually applying it? But yeah, so I was shocked. But then when asking them, they told us like, it's because of the location. So they're always passing the guilt to someone else. I do think that if you tell them the implications of what they're putting outside, it's maybe easier for them to recognize that they should be making more of an effort. And if you're actually letting them know what you're trying to make, like they know about the discount, but they didn't know that they wanted to reach 25% of reusable cups. So for them, it's not in their mind. They know that they can give you a discount and that's it. But they actually told us, like, when we asked them, oh, so do you give the discount for, no, do you give them, can you serve in reusable cups? They told us, yes, we have a discount. And then immediately they started saying, but they didn't know the implications of what was happening behind that. So I do think that training them and letting them know what their actions may provide with in the results, it's a really helpful idea.
I think 2 points. One, I think the implication, but connecting them to you're contributing to the achievement of this goal, I think is one thing in terms of you spend it in terms of you're actively part of the solution. But I think what our study also showed was that there's a huge gap in terms of commitment and leadership, even at the store level, in that you are paying to dispose of your waste in a certain way, and yet you're letting your employees do it in a way that does not conform with your own policies. So when we look at leadership, it's not just at the corporate level in the very abstract, say the company, but the people on the ground, and them either the right policies and training is not in place, or if they're not adhering to it, then why are you letting them continually say that we just leave our cardboard for the Romania or the Roma to pick up? Like that's unacceptable, because you're originally just saying you're costing the company money there. Then why are we paying for this? So so I think it really is a two-pronged approach in terms of making them feel actively part of the solution, and then ensuring that there's adherence to the policies and processes associated with managing and handling your waste.
And do you believe that Starbucks is authentically committed with sustainability?
I'll go first, and I'll let you have the last comment.
Yes.
I think it depends on the issue, because to be fair, this is a small section of one of their broader goals. And I think when you look at the goals that are more linear and perhaps slightly more simple, like if you're building stores that are LEED compliant, well, that you just go to the contractor, here are the specifications, you build it. And that's very simple and easy to do. Similar, you can put reducing your water consumption. You can buy things that actually just allow you to use less water. But when you're moving into an area like this, where there's far more, you're fighting not only to understand and manage different systems of managing waste, collecting waste, but then you're fighting ingrained irrationalities of human behavior. It's far more complex, and perhaps the initial sort of excitement and exuberance to achieve these goals you're seeing is really being sort of tempered with the reality is hard, and it'll take a long time. But in terms of ethical sourcing, they're almost met their toll of 100% of all their coffee to be ethically sourced. And so you can see their actions to work with local communities to grow coffee, to make it more sustainable, drought resistant. They're doing that. Their community investments, the fact is that they're in the US where health insurance was a major issue. They're one of the first companies to provide full healthcare benefits for part-time employees. So it's maybe uneven. So they're having success in certain areas, and in other areas, the struggle continues.
Just to complement a little bit that, I think that as first sight you say, yes, actually they're doing something. But then when you see that the results they're presenting are according to 6 countries, which are the ones that have the 53% of the company-owned stores, it's a little bit like shady. Like for me, it's you have to make an effort in all of your stores. You're not only that 53%, you have 47% more. So I do think that once you get deep into the literature and the stats and everything, you do think that it's a little bit shady, the green they're selling.
It's funny because somehow they changed the local culture. In Spain, the local culture was or is, I don't know, it's changing. There's a shift going on, but to drink your coffee inside the bars, no? Lots of the social life, Spanish social life happens inside the bars, and the coffee, and this, like the old times, they were using glass and they were washing. But Starbucks brings another culture that you bring your cup, so then they will be struggling against their own culture, the culture they are creating. So, well, that's interesting. And I think that you should consider Little Bridge, yes, as a platform for a project.
Thank you.
Definitely. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.